Mark here, and today we're going to look at the restoration of headlights, automotive headlights. So this is a 2016 Toyota RAV that I picked up last fall, and the headlights are horrible. This is actually fairly common with newer vehicles, as opposed to older vehicles that had glass headlights. So these newer vehicles have a plastic over them. Weather, bugs hitting it, it deteriorates, the sun shining on it. So what we want to do is we want to sand this down and polish it up. And then of course the final step is to protect it from UV. So some of the things you'll need is of course masking tape, and that's just to mask off edges maybe around so that when you're sanding it, you're not roughing up any of your surfaces around the headlight. Might also be a good idea to lift the hood if you have something similar to this, get that out of the way. So mask it up, and then you're gonna need some sandpaper. So I picked this sandpaper up off Amazon. I've got some different sandpapers, but this was just a nice, inexpensive pack that has grits all the way, I think, from 40 grit all the way up to 3,000 grit. So what I'm looking at is there's 2 sheets of each, so I'm looking at 60 grit to start off with, and we're just going to sand the rough edges down after we clean it with a little soap and water and a spongy 3M kind of pad, bristle pad. Clean that off, we'll sand it down, get all that worn stuff off the top, and then we're going to switch to a 1000 grit, and we're going to spray some water on it. So you will need just a spray bottle of some sort, keeping it wet as you're going along, and then sanding it with that 1000. We're going to finish it off with a 3000 grit, and then once that's done, we are going to polish it. And I picked up a kit. This one is Meguiar's. I just picked it up at the local automotive store. It has this brush here for a polishing brush, and then it has a compound inside that you would put on it, a polishing compound. That is going to be the polishing step, and then to finish everything off, you want to pick up a film, a clear film by 3M, and what you do is you take and cut it out to the size that you want, and I've made a template for this. And then what you do is you apply it to that. What that's going to do is it's going to protect from, of course, bugs hitting it, and more importantly, ultraviolet rays hitting it. If that film gets damaged down the road, you can always remove it and replace it, and you don't have to go through the whole polishing step. But for an example of the vehicles I've done, it's actually lasted quite a few years and I haven't had to remove it. Now, when sanding down, it's important to know that you always want to alternate your sanding pattern. So with your 60 grit, if you were to go along this way, get all that off, then when you start wet sanding, you want to go up and down. And depending on how you start, you always want to cross sand it. And what that's going to do is when you sand it in one direction, you're going to leave, you know, microscopic raised edges from the sandpaper, some lines going across. And by going the other way, you're going to go against that grain and you're going to knock off all those peaks. And then of course your final sand will be the opposite direction of your 1000 grit sand. Now it is normal for things to get worse before they get better. So you can see how there's lots of scratches in here. This is normal. It is nice and smooth now, although I can see a couple little rock divots in here. But I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. I don't want to sand it down to that level. I just want to get off of all that decomposed UV film that's on there, and of course any kind of bug debris and road debris that's on there. So it feels really smooth now. So I think that is good. We will continue on with our next step, which is going to be starting our wet sanding process. I realized one thing when I was taking the sandpaper out was I said 60 grit, I meant 600 grit. All right, so we're done our 1000 grit. And what we want to look for here now is all those marks that we made going this direction, horizontally. So now we're going to take our finest grit, our 3000 grit, and we're going to go back over that in this direction here. And what we're looking for is we want to get rid of all of these scratches going up and down. You can see already how much clearer it is just moving down in the different grits. There's still a slight haze to it, but that's where the polish is going to shine, so to speak. All right, so I'll put the link to all this stuff down in the description. This is Meguiar's Plastics. I picked this stuff up a few years ago. I just had to pick up a replacement bottle of this. Just cleaning off this pad is all you really need. Just some soap and water. Just in the time, the sun's coming around. I tried to stay in the shade here along the edge of the house, but I'm losing time. So this process of sanding, start to finish probably takes, I would give it an hour. You don't want to rush it. So you want to put a little bit on your pad. You want to try to use the lower speed of the drill, and you'd want to try not to use the edges of it. Now in some areas you may have to, but try to keep it flat and firmly in place. All right, so there it is. You can see it looks much better than it did previously. So there's a couple little score marks here. These are the ones I was talking about earlier, where it could have been a rock or something that hit that. It's really not of any significance because they're just little spots there. Chances are when you put the UV film over, it'll likely cover those anyway. But the main area of focus, of course, right where your headlight is, right where all that haze was. Now you can see up in this area there's a little bit of haze underneath, but the lens itself is perfectly clear. There are some areas down in here that you can actually see some haze underneath on the other side. Again, that's you're not going to get rid of that without removing this housing or replacing it. So the main focus is, of course, our lights, being the high and low beam is your main concern there. All right, so of course we're inside. We're going to start on this 3M. Now this was bought on Amazon, and I will put a link down in the description for this. You have to read a lot of reviews. There is a lot of knockoffs out there. And it's unfortunate, but buying on Amazon, you're hoping to be able to get some good quality product. Reading the reviews will tell you a lot about this. This is Vivid 3M Clear, which is the clear that I want. Of course, you can get tinted. It does have the 3M, Oracle, Sisser, Vivid logos, and it's made in Canada, not made in China. So I guess there's Canadian and probably US manufacturers for 3M, probably other countries of the world as well. 3M's a pretty large company. All right, so can't recall the size of roll I bought, but there's enough here I figured out to do both my vehicle and my wife's vehicle, which is actually a 2012, which is looking pretty bad. So they do give you this little squeegee here as well. So that's good. Now applying it, what I did is I took a piece of paper. I actually took two ledger-sized pieces of paper because of the size of the headlight. And I took it down and I kind of laid it on and traced out the edges, cut it out, cleaned it up. I went a step further and took a picture of it and loaded it into my computer, adjusted the size, and then laser engraved this out. So if you don't have those tools, that's fine. You can just use your template, but this is a nice straight-edged laser engraved, and I actually reduced the size by about 0.5% just to make sure that I didn't have any overlap. So there's my template of the driver's headlight, and here's the template of the passenger's headlight. So we're going to use that. We're going to unroll this. We're going to cut this out. Now, to adhere this to the headlight, I wouldn't recommend doing it dry. Some people do dry install. I used to do, in my 20s, I used to do a lot of window tinting. And of course you do it for your vehicle, and all your buddies are all excited and they're like, oh man, can you do mine? Can you do mine? So I ended up doing quite a bit of that. And what I used then is what I'm going to use now, is just water and a little bit of dish soap. So Dawn seems to be our go-to around here for all kinds of different things. It's a great soap. And then you want to spray on the film as well as on the headlight, but we'll get to that during the install. All right, so that is good. So I can see my entire area. Now, one thing you have to watch is I've got a pretty sharp point here. When I cut this out, I'm actually going to round this off slightly. You want to try not to have points that can kind of loosen up and peel. It's over off to the side anyway. And what I've decided to do with this is just to apply it to the flat surface of the headlight. There are areas where it does go over top, and then of course along the side. Those ones aren't really damaged. They're not affected too much. Because of course they're not in direct path of any bugs or stones or anything, and that's generally where the turning signal is. If you were going to go on some corners, especially sharp corners, you'll probably want to get a heat gun or blow dryer, and you'll want to warm it up so it stretches over. It's a little more tricky. I felt that I didn't need to do that because the main focus again is on my headlight and my forward facing. All right, so now that we have that done up, what I'm actually going to do is when I cut this out, I am going to take a little piece of my leftover here, and I'm going to put it down on my laser engraver, and just to see, I'm a little concerned because I don't want the edges to melt and to have issues there. But I'm curious to see as to how a laser engraver will cut this out. All right, so there we go. And I've rounded off that edge. All right, just looking at this piece here, it actually looks, I don't know if you can see that, see if we can focus in. It actually looks pretty good. So there's no ridges on it, which is what I was thinking. So if you have a laser engraver or a friend who has a laser engraver, then you can cut it out with that. All right, so I got my squeegee here. You want to have a microfiber cloth as well. And if you've ever done any kind of window tinting, The process is basically wetting down the film, and then you want to squeegee it out. Okay, so this is slightly sticky, so you do want to peel it back. You want to make sure it doesn't go all crazy on you. And wetting it down with the soap and water, wetting your headlight down with the soap and water as well. And then this will give you a chance to line it up. So it'll go on. All right, so once you have it all lined up, then what you want to do is you want to hold on to it. Just kind of gently move outward from the center, just to kind of remove the excess out of there, just so it sticks a little better. And then you can move in and start squeegeeing out just lightly. You don't have to do it hard at all. You'll see all that, all the bubbles come out. So you want to get all the water out. That's really important, not just to make sure the bubbles are out. I have a couple bubbles over in this area here. So you can peel this back up again, which is what I'm going to do, because I'm not happy with that, and I don't want to show you a perfect installation and then you go and have an issue like this. So you want to wet it down as you remove it. Probably a good idea to have two people, one spraying and one pulling. All right, there we go. So wet it down really good, and as you lay it down, watch for bubbles. So you want to lay it down from one side to the other, and it'll work out any bubbles as you move it across. Okay. Oops, see, I let the corner fall before the center, so it traps some bubbles. So you just want to lay it down. I might need a little bit more water in there. There you go. Just like that. Okay, I don't see any air bubbles now. And if you do catch air bubbles in there, you can trap them. And then as the edges dry out, you can't push that liquid over and you end up getting a crease. So now that that's done, we're going to continue and push the water out from the center, up gently and evenly, and just make sure we get that out. Now we don't have any air bubbles, which was a mistake everybody can make. I haven't done window tinting in a number of years, and it's been a few years since I applied this product. All right, I think that is it. Looks good. No bubbles, and yeah, I think it's just in time. So there we go, looking good, and it's protected. And there goes my sheep and goats, because they know the storm's coming. Anyway, we're gonna end it here. If you have any questions, please put them down below. I'm gonna pack up and roll up my windows so I don't get wet by the oncoming storm. Take care and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.